Thank you. Hi, good afternoon. My name is Adam. First, I want to thank Cara for putting this conference on. I'm very excited to see how many people have come out and all of the great speakers we have had so far today. I think it's very important, as you've heard from many people, this is a long journey to end dog meat in Korea, and it's really important that we're all working together to make this happen. And so I'm going to talk a little bit about the work that we have done with the dog meat farmers, and specifically what has happened with these dogs and what we have seen. We often get a lot of questions about the dogs that we rescue from the dog meat farms and whether or not they're suitable to be companions. So, although a lot of the work I do is not very happy work, for example, the footage that Andrew showed before from India is footage that I took. Imagine seeing it on the video, it's even worse to see it in person. But today, I am the lucky one that gets to give you guys a little bit of happy news and tell you some happy stories. So I'm very excited to do this today. Let me start the timer so that I don't go over. So first I want to give a little background on our work with the farmers, because I know there's a lot of questions that come up. We know, and as we just saw, that there are thousands of farms in South Korea with tens of thousands of dogs on them altogether. So, of course, it's not realistic to think that we are going to be able to, farmer by farmer, close each farm, especially as NGOs. We are not the only organization. There are many organizations within Korea that also work to close farms. But even with all of those organizations, there's no way that we are going to be able to rescue our way out of this situation. So if that's the case, why engage in this sort of work with closing dog meat farms? And essentially, there's a number of reasons, but the three main categories are, of course, we want to save the lives of the dogs. I think all of us in this room are here because we care very much about the dogs involved in this industry, and we want them to have a better life. But also, it comes down to building partnerships, strategic partnerships, as well as building awareness and support, awareness of the dog meat trade and support to end this trade. So, I don't think I needed a slide on saving dogs' lives. I think we can all see why that would be a good cause or a noble cause. So I didn't include a slide on that. And we'll talk about the dogs who get saved later on. But I did want to talk about this idea of building partnerships and finding common ground. So you heard from one of our farmers earlier on the phone. Fortunately, he couldn't be here in person. I understand there's a lot of intimidation he would be facing if he came down here and was seen by the other farmers. However, how this started was we were working to sort of understand the dog meat trade in Korea, and in doing that we were meeting with different farmers. Well, after a while it became apparent that many farmers would choose to get out of the business if they could. And we understand, both as human beings and as an agency, that there are human lives that are in this industry. And these human beings that are in this industry are not, as our farmer said, are not all evil, horrendous people, even though we may see them as doing acts that are bad. But they are people who are trying to make a living. And in considering ending this trade, we felt it was important to also consider the farmer and ultimately the traders and the other people involved, and how we can get them out of this business and into something else. So we started working with farmers to see whether we could get them to switch to another type of agriculture or another business and get them to agree to get out of the business. Part of this was so that we could build these partnerships. We need to be able to converse with the farmers as a movement. I don't mean us as HSI, but as a movement, we need to be able to communicate with the farmers if we want to come to a way to end this dog meat trade, because they are a very well organized faction of people that are involved in this trade, and so we need to be able to dialogue with them and we need to be able to speak with them. So it wasn't easy. It's not easy necessarily, especially at first, to get to the position where we could build trust and talk with the farmers and have them be open with us. But over time, we've now worked with 5 different farmers, and over time, it's gotten easier because they hear from other farmers that it's okay. We're not there to tell them they're horrible people. We really just want to work with them. They have told us they want to get out of the business. We want them out of the business, so how can we make this happen? So these are just some pictures from a few of the farms that we worked with. And when we do the farm closures, not only do we want to see the dogs off of the farm, but we want to see all of the caging destroyed and all of the apparatus that they use to farm dogs. And that's what these last pictures are. Here are cages being taken down and then the field being bulldozed. And this is because we know that even though we follow up with farmers, they do need to make a living, and we don't want to make it easy for them to slip back into dog meat farming. They've signed an agreement with us that is a legal agreement saying they will stay out of the business, but if the cages are still there, it's too tempting, I think, to fill them back up. So in this way, they would have to reinvest in all of that infrastructure to start up again. Just going to okay, so the next thing we felt was important about the farms was building awareness. Now, part of this is just the media attention that's brought to the issue when you're talking about animals and rescuing dogs, and you get a lot of media interest. So that in itself builds some awareness. Now, it's evolved over time, especially the coverage that we have gotten within Korea. In the beginning, most of the coverage we got was international, right? Agencies in the US, the UK, and different Western countries like that. But over time, there's been more interest from Korean media and more coverage of the work that we've been doing. But then really, when we talk about building awareness, as has been mentioned by several speakers, one of the issues that we sort of saw was this sort of dichotomy of thought about dogs. There are dogs that are meat dogs, and there are dogs also that are pet dogs. And we wanted to try to use the dogs that we got from these farms to break that down a little bit. Are these meat dogs really any different than pet dogs? And is there a typical meat dog? As we just heard, that's not always the case. So I think the two kinds of dogs that are traditionally thought of as meat dogs are of course, the Tosa or the Tosa mix. And what we found a lot on a lot of the farms is that those dogs are raised for meat and for fighting. Many of the farmers will sell the dogs for fighting, or they'll sell them for meat. They can make more money generally if they sell them for fighting, but they can't sell that many of them for fighting, so then they'll sell them for meat also. Of course, the yellow dog, and I'm glad what we have found measures up with the last speaker, which is that we have also DNA tested many of these yellow dogs, and we've found them on average to be about 50% Jindo. And then most of them were mixed with the Chow Chow or Shiba Inu, but there are other breeds also. But we've also found that there are many other breeds sold for the purposes of slaughter. So these are just some of the breeds that we've found on the farms that we've worked with. Was St. Bernard up there in the corner. I'm not going to say this right. This is a Korean Sasbury, if I pronounce that right, in the middle, which is a breed, this one, not very common in the United States, so I was not familiar with this dog, but somebody was, luckily, and knew what the breed was. Huskies, beagles, this is an English pointer, and this is a golden retriever. Additionally, we've found dogs of all shapes and sizes. This is a Rottweiler. We found small dogs, Chihuahua mixes. I'm not sure what that guy is. Little terrier. English setter. Malinois, which are typically, right, you've seen them probably as police dogs or army dogs. They're very popular for that. And Samoyeds. So, as you can see, we're not finding, I mean, we have yet to be on a dog meat farm that is exclusively Tosa mixes or Tosas and Jindos or Jindo mixes or yellow dogs. All the farms we have been on include some amount of other breeds as well. We've also heard from the farmers that sometimes this is because, much like one of the farms we worked with, the farmer we heard from, which is that they may start out to get into the pet business, but they're not making enough money, so basically it comes down to if they can't sell them for pets, then they just sort of start selling them for meat. So they have kind of a mix of population. Also, we've also found that farmers will tell us that people have dropped their dogs off, so people that can no longer keep their animals will give them to the dog meat farmers. It's hard to imagine, I'm sure for most of us, as who have dog companions at home, to think that you would drop them off at a dog meat farm, but we do hear this quite a lot. And then, of course, there are many, many, many mixes that are just, who knows, we call them Heinz 57, right, which just means we don't know what kind of mix they are. They're a mix of all different sorts of breeds, and again, in all shapes and sizes. So, the one thing that I think is the most important, and I'm probably not telling you anything that you don't know, but this is what one of the things we really try to stress, and one of the things that we really wanted to show through this program with the rescue of the dogs, and that's that all dog breeds and dog mixes are equally capable of becoming loving companions and family members. It doesn't matter what the breed, it doesn't matter where they came from. Okay, they all have that capacity. Some of them may be more psychologically damaged, may need some more work, but they all have that capacity. And so in this photo, I included a number of the dogs from our dog meat farms in their homes. Just, you know, we got the Tosa, sort of Jindo mix, not sure, yellow dog maybe, little dog. And then I also included, this is a photo from a dog fighting case in the US. And that's because we had a very similar sort of way of thinking in the United States, where many, many people thought dogs that were used in dog fighting, pit bulls that were used for dog fighting, were not suitable companions. They were different kind of animal than dogs that people have in their homes. And we started many years ago now a program to assess and adopt out dogs from dog fighting cases, right? We do a lot of arrests of dog fighters and confiscation of dog fighting dogs in the United States. And it was very controversial at first because people thought we were adopting out these dogs that were going to kill small children and other animals. And there certainly were dogs that were not suitable for adoption, were not safe. But we found that the majority of dogs, on average now over the last almost 10 years now that we've been doing this program, about 85% of the dogs are adoptable and are adopted and go into loving homes. So this was a very similar sort of mentality that was going on, that we had to make people understand these dogs are not any different than the dog that sleeps in your bed at night. They also have this capacity to be loving companions. So one of the questions that we get a lot, so I thought I would just address it up front. We'll obviously have time for questions later on, but is why does the Humane Society International, HSI, my organization, ship dogs to the United States for adoption? It obviously would be vastly cheaper and easier were the dogs to remain in Korea. However, what we felt was that as an international organization, to come to Korea, engage in this work of closing down farms, and then expect local groups and local shelters who are already very overburdened with the dogs that they have to deal with in the country, to then expect them to deal with these dogs, which were now our responsibility. So that was the first reason. We felt a responsibility to see it through from the beginning to the end and not just dump the dogs, so to speak, on local groups. And since many of you may work with shelters or may be in an organization that is involved in rescuing and sheltering and adoption, you know that the adoption of larger breed dogs, particularly mixed breeds, Tosas, is very difficult in Korea at this particular point in time. Partly due to, I think, just the way that most people live, right? Because in a city like Seoul, where people are living in giant apartment buildings, it's not very easy to take, a 55 kilogram Tosa down the elevator and walk him on the street, right? Many people aren't going to be very happy to share an elevator with that dog. So, and we knew that within the United States, people didn't share that same way of thinking, right? They didn't grow up here and they had a very different way of thinking. There's a lot of people in the States that have large yards, things like these that are really suitable for these dogs. We also found that the dogs are very, just due to the fact that they are sort of rescued from the dog meat trade, is very desirable for people in the United States. We also see this within the United States in the work that I've done on rescuing dogs from puppy mills or hoarding cases, cruelty cases. This tends to get people really want to adopt a dog that came out of, they feel a real sort of empathy for those dogs and a real compassion for those dogs, and they really want to take them into their home. And we knew that many of the shelters in the United States that we work with are very well equipped to help these dogs overcome the psychological damage that that has occurred in them due to the conditions that they lived in. And so we felt we had the best chance of success in actually getting them into homes to be able to show that they could be companions. And I will say that the conditions that we see in these dogs in terms of their behavior is completely similar and the same as the conditions we see in any dog that comes from a neglectful situation. These dogs don't behave any differently coming from a dog meat farm than they do coming from a puppy mill or a hoarding situation. Any situation where the dog's basic socialization and basic needs have not been met will bring about the same behaviors in the dogs. So many of our shelters in the US, though they hadn't dealt with dogs from dog meat farms, were very well experienced in dealing with dogs from other cruelty situations, and so could deal with a lot of the behaviors they found. So this is a picture from San Diego Humane Society, who took some of the dogs. This is the first day that the dogs were available for adoption, some of them. Of course, some needed more time. This line is about 3 hours before the shelter opened for adoptions. They opened at 11. This first gentleman and his daughter, because I spoke with them on the line, had come at 7 o'clock in the morning, 4 hours in advance, to get one of these dogs. They did, in fact, adopt a very shy female Tosa who now is thriving in their home. And what we found was for the shelters in the United States, when they get these dogs in, they would get so much interest from the public that so many people came through the shelter that their existing shelter population also the adoptions of those dogs also went up. So not everyone that goes in is going to adopt a dog from the dog meat rescue, but they often would adopt another animal. And so all of their adoptions go up. So it benefits not just the dogs from the rescue, but also benefits the shelters themselves in helping them increase their adoptions. We also found that many of the adopters have become very, very interested and very passionate about this issue, as you can imagine. And they have started to connect with each other on social media now. And they've started a Facebook group where they can share stories and questions and concerns they may have about overcoming certain behaviors. And it's been really wonderful to see now a whole community built up around these dogs. Okay, so quick overview. Since the beginning of 2015, we're now at about over 500 dogs from the 5 dog meat farms that we worked with in Korea. The vast majority of them have adjusted very well and very quickly. Now, each shelter has their own idea of when a dog is ready for adoption. Some of them adopt them out right away and then provide behavioral support to the family. Some wait until they feel like they're in a better place and a little more socialized before they adopt them out. That's up to the partner shelters. We trust them. We trust their judgment. That's why they're partners with us. There have been a handful, not too many, but a handful that have required more extensive behavior modification. This has been almost exclusively fear-based behavior, meaning these dogs were so fearful they were not at a point where we felt safe adopting them out, because if they ever got away from the person, they would never be able to get them back. And so they have, through some of our partner groups, gotten much longer term behavior modification. And I think the last one of these is being adopted this weekend. This dog has been at a training facility, a boarding and training facility since came over in March of 2015, was transferred to the facility in April of 2015. So a year and several months later, that dog has been in training the whole time, and she's now she'll be adopted this weekend. But thankfully, most of the dogs are able to get into a situation and into a home much more quickly. All right, so I'm just going to tell you just give you a few examples. It was hard to pick, but Waldo was one of my favorites from the Wonju dog meat farm that we closed just this past April. He was very, very emaciated. He looked like an old man. I kept calling him an old man. He looked like an old dog, right? He was emaciated. His skin was terrible. His eyes were terrible. We brought him over. He was in the hospital for a week. And then he went to one of our partner groups. It's a rescue group, and he was placed in foster care. He's still in foster care, but this is him now. That's him sitting on the, he's no longer underweight, as you can see. And that's him with his little horse friend there. Zeus is another one. I'm going to show a video at the end, a very short video of just Zeus and his family, because they're just such an incredible story with the 3 sons they have. Zeus was adopted as a little puppy. He was from the video that Andrew showed before. of the dog meat farm rescue. He's from that one. He's one of the little puppies in the cage where the mom was holding the bowl, if you remember that. And he's actually, wait till you see the video, because he's quite a bit bigger than this right now. But he's doing really well. Misha and Sunshine. So they were two dogs from one of the farms. They were both, sorry, Misha was the adult, and then Sunshine was the puppy. Different cages, but they were both adopted in the San Francisco area, and so they meet up and have play dates. A lot of the dogs get together, the owners get together and have the dogs play. This is, save the best for last. This is my dog, Ruby. This was Ruby when she was on the farm. She was very, very sick, and I pulled her off the farm before the rest of the dogs. Oops. Because I didn't think she would survive if I left her there. I boarded her at a vet for a week, and then I went home, and I took her to bring to a rescue group. The group was all set up to pick her up at my house the following day, and of course, by the time I got home, I called the group up and said, never mind, she's staying with me. So that's her with a couple of my other, you can see she's a smaller dog with a couple of my other dogs. And then just a couple of slides, because there are so many stories I wanted to share, but the time is so limited. So I just did some photos of I love a little selfie photo. So I just did some different photos of some of the dogs in their homes. You see a lot of them are in homes that have kids and do very well with them. And that's me, and that is just a gathering of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. These 5. This guy. Oh yeah, no, that's all 6 of them. These guys are all from dog meat farms in Korea, and they meet up a lot. And this is the Washington D.C. area, and they go for hikes. And I live in Washington D.C., so luckily I've been able to go out with them and see the dogs and see how they're doing. But I want to play just the one video clip of Zeus. Which we'll put on now so you can see how well he's doing with his family. There he is.
It's because he just needs a title like that. And he knows he's going to have a little time out.
I just edited it without the sound because I thought it might be hard to translate the speaking.
Spoiled. So it's spoiled. So we have like
No, that's it. Just a short clip to show you. I just wanted you to see one of them in action. So thank you very much.